Can you guys see my screen? Yeah, you got it.
Yes,
okay.
yes.
Okay, so good evening, everyone. And thank you for having us, myself and Noor. I want to thank Rabbi Warren and Sadia and the founder of your organization at the bottom of my screen, right, Jane? Thank you for having us. My name is Hanan Schlesinger, as you heard. And before I say anything about myself, before anything about roots, we're going to get on the plane together. We're all traveling right now to Heathrow Airport. I don't know how long it'll take you. The plane flight from London to Tel Aviv is something like 5 hours, I think. We get to know each other a little bit on the plane. We're landing now in Tel Aviv. You can see on the map where Tel Aviv is on the coast of Israel. Israel's in the orange color on the Mediterranean. After we go through customs and all that type of stuff, we're getting on a bus together and we're traveling southeast. We're going through Ramleh. We're not going all the way down to Beersheba. You can look at the map. We are crossing over that dotted line, the dotted line that separates between the orange and the gray blue. The orange is Israel proper, Israel and its borders from 1948. And the gray blue area, the cities you see there are Nablus, Bethlehem, and Hebron, that's what's called the West Bank. We're crossing over in our bus to the West Bank, and we're going up the mountains. Now we're going due east. What we see around us is olive trees, lots of mountains. We see goats and we see sheep. We see Palestinian villages and we see Israeli settlements, and they're very different. We can distinguish between them. The Palestinians live in rural agricultural villages. The Israelis live in suburban towns that look modern with their well-kept lawns. And then in the West Bank, someplace between Bethlehem and Hebron, we get onto a dirt road. We drive a few minutes, 5 minutes, the bus stops, we get out, and we're in the middle of Palestinian farmland. We're right near a main road. We're walking into a compound, Palestinian agricultural compound, surrounded by a wall, a stone wall. Inside we see a greenhouse, we see a goat pen, we see chickens, we see lots of cats, we see trees growing, fruit trees, and then we see a classroom, and we see a kitchen, and we see a bathroom, and then we see a big covered area that can sit about 60 or 70 people. We sit down there, and that's where you're meeting me. And now I'm going to tell you what I would tell you when we're sitting in that place all together after getting off of the bus, after getting off of the plane. You are now sitting in just about the most unique place in the whole West Bank. What's so unique about this piece of Palestinian farmland is it also serves as a community center. And this community center is the only, literally the only joint Israeli-Palestinian community center in the whole West Bank. Why is it the only one? Why is there nothing else like it? Why is it the only place that Israelis and Palestinians can meet in the West Bank in dignity and in equality and with a sense of safety? Because every other piece of land in the West Bank is either theirs or ours, Palestinian or Israeli. There's no neutral ground. Now, Israeli towns and settlements in the West Bank, Palestinians are forbidden from entering by Israeli military law, except if they're workers with a work permit under armed guard. So they certainly wouldn't go there. They can't go there, Palestinians, into an Israeli town to drink coffee. And Israelis are forbidden by Israeli law from entering Palestinian villages and towns and cities in the West Bank. There's a big red sign at the entrance that says Israelis are forbidden from going, and the sign says if you go, you're risking your life. There's no shared ground, there's no shared space. But it's not just there's no shared space, there's nothing shared in the West Bank. There's lots of Israelis, lots of Palestinians, but they have different languages, they live in different towns and villages, they have different newspapers, radio, television, they have different educational systems, different economic systems, they have different municipalities, they live under different legal systems. I, in the West Bank, and Israeli live under Israeli law, the Palestinians live under Israeli military law. We have different religions, I said, different school systems. We have different calendars. We even have different time systems. The Palestinians and Israelis, they switch to and from daylight savings time, sometimes in different days or weeks, even months. We have different watches. It's totally separate. And the two sides don't know anything about each other. There's lots of fear of the other. There are prejudices. There's even hate, I would say, and racism. And there's no common ground. Were there to be an Israeli and a Palestinian that wanted to meet for coffee, there's no such thing because there's no friends. But were there friends from either side? They were looking for a place to meet for a cup of coffee. There's no place to do it. Except for the root center that we founded 7 years ago where you're sitting right now. We call it Merkaz Karama. Karam is an Aramaic word that means dignity. And Merkaz is a word that means center. It's the dignity center. And we created a space for the two sides to meet each other, to sit down with each other, to begin to break down the walls of misunderstanding and of hate and of fear. You see, the two sides, when they come to an activity, usually the Palestinians, if they haven't been with us before, sit on one side, the Israelis on the other side, they look at each other warily and they're afraid. Then we begin to break the ice formally or informally with facilitated activities, and they begin talking. By the end of the event, let's say 2 hours later, it always happens that someone comes up to me, usually an Israeli, and says, wow, Hanan, that was great. I say, what was so great? And the guy points at someone, a Palestinian, sitting in the corner of the, see that guy, I talked to him. That was so great. I got to talk to someone that I never would have talked to. And usually people have their eyes opened by seeing there's a whole reality on the other side that they had no idea. There's so much ignorance of the other. I claim that our community center is not only holy ground because the two sides meet there, enemies become friends, but it's also a mental health clinic because it looks to me that Israelis and Palestinians are both sick. Fear is a sickness and prejudice and racism is a sickness, which means that our little community center, the Dignity Center, is also a mental health clinic. And it begins people on a path of healing, not immediately and not everyone, but slowly, slowly people become, I think, better human beings, better Muslims, better Jews, better Christians, because the other becomes real, becomes often a friend. So that's my introduction to the place. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and I'm going to introduce myself. I'm going to use 3 words to introduce myself. The first word is Jew, the second word is Zionist, and the third word is settler. I'm going to take a few minutes to unpack each of those words. When I say I'm a Jew, I'm not primarily talking about religion. I'm a religious person, but what I'm primarily talking about is peoplehood. The Jews call themselves a people, that is to say a family that extended an extended historical family. All of the Jews in all ages, including today, are part of the extended Jewish family. I have a sense that I wasn't born just 63 years ago. I was actually born 3,000 years ago, because since the Jewish people have been on this planet, I'm part of that people. And all of the way stations of Jewish history are part of my consciousness. And I know that when we first were born, we Jewish people, we at the outset were told we're going to be connected to a certain piece of land, real estate, the land of Israel. And from my perspective, it's impossible to separate Jewish identity from the land. In some way, some fashion, we're interconnected, the land and the people. And that's why I can, in my opinion, go seamlessly from talking about myself as a Jew to talking about myself as a Zionist. The Zionist movement was created about 150 years ago as a political platform to return the Jewish people to our ancient homeland, the land of Israel.